Over the next few decades, the metaverse will become immensely more advanced and integrated in our daily lives. Some people think the metaverse is just a hype. Others believe it to be the greatest evolution of the internet. Together with the sharpest minds in this space, we are going to explore the future of the metaverse. We want to understand the impacts of this new world, and in this show, we will find the answers. Welcome to Metaverse Mentors. So, Joren, very glad to receive your Metaverse Mentors today.
Please call me JoJo.
JoJo?
Yeah, in English people just usually call me JoJo. Joren is kind of like my Dutch name.
Yeah, but I already know you.
Yeah, I know.
No problem. For contextualization, Joren is not only a guest on Metaverse Mentors, but I already knew him from my previous career experience, and now our paths have crossed again in Web3. So pleasure to have you on Metaverse Mentors. Very excited to learn about what you're doing in the Web3 space as a whole, but also in play-to-earn gaming specifically. You're doing a lot of stuff on Twitter, I'm seeing, broadcasting new insights there, but also with your own play-to-earn game that you're developing, Castle of Blackwaters, and also on, we have a visitor here for the listeners. As long as not interrupting, it's okay, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. But also with your Fair Play collective. Yeah. But having said that, before we dive into play-to-earn gaming in depth and very specific topics, can you give a bit of background about yourself, how you started in Web3 and what you're doing now currently?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Joren, but as you know, people call me JoJo in the English world. I actually got involved with blockchain around 2016. That's the first time when I realized Bitcoin was a thing, and I became kind of woke about inflation, the gold standard, and I was one of those kids who told my parents, blockchain, Bitcoin is the future, buy Bitcoin. So I actually spent, a lot of my money at the time I was still in school investing into cryptos. 2017, double, triple your investment. And then the crash happened and, you lost everything, as most people did at the time. Expensive lesson, but then 2018, 19 came around, and for some reason I was still convinced that it was the future. So I did another round of investing all the money that I had at the time, and that made it pretty well in the end. At the time I was also an IT recruiter. I did that for 2 years, learned a lot about sales and how to talk to people, talking technology. I've always been a fan. And it wasn't until somebody that I was speaking to, one of my people, my developers that I was helping, he mentioned play-to-earn gaming. And I was like, play-to-earn gaming? What is play-to-earn gaming? And he explained how nowadays, you have gaming as old school. I've always been a gamer. It's a huge passion of mine. But they now combine that with blockchain to the point where the digital assets that you have, you become the owner of them. Like if you spend time, effort, and maybe some money to play this game and to get your digital sword or your digital axe, you're now the owner of that axe, and you can sell it, you can trade it. The game no longer can tell you what to do with it. And that was just groundbreaking to me. I thought it was revolutionary. So that sent me down a huge rabbit hole of, what is play-to-earn gaming. I wanted to learn everything about it, and that's when I discovered Axie Infinity. And at first I was quite disappointed because the quality of play-to-earn games that was out there, they weren't fun and they didn't seem very sustainable. So that's when I set out to solve these issues, and I'll save the rest for later.
Very interesting. You already say a couple of interesting things: the sustainability, the interactivity of the game. When was it precisely? Was it also in 2018 where you started exploring and more specifying, developing in play-to-earn?
No, that was early 2021. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So early 2021, you still saw this gaming space. I was like, it's not really the level of quality of interactivity that I'm used to.
Yeah, early 2021 is when I first discovered play-to-earn gaming, and I started with Axie and a game called Townstar. And I found this pattern that, as the game started, there was usually a lot of hype, and the price of the tokens that the game supports would skyrocket exponentially. More people would come, but then every time, as soon as the player growth stagnated and even dropped a little bit, all of the tokens would come crashing, and they would never really recover to the peak that they had before. So I did a lot of researching into how exactly that happens, like what is the economics behind that. And it's often associated with breeding mechanics, which is a huge thing in play-to-earn gaming. I think it's one of the biggest downfalls of Axie Infinity. And with a breeding mechanic, you have these NFTs that you use to play the game, and initially there's only a couple of them, so the supply is very limited, but the demand keeps increasing. And people who have these NFTs, they can then earn money, they can earn tokens, and those tokens have a value. But what is the value of the tokens? Who wants to buy them? The people wanting to buy the NFTs, the people wanting to get in. So the only people buying the tokens is the people wanting to buy the NFTs so that they can use the NFTs to gain more tokens. And I'm not sure if you see where I'm going with this, but it's a very vicious circle where it's all about value extraction. Nobody's actually spending money in Axie Infinity because they enjoy the game, because they're trying to boost their playstyle. It is purely to maximize their value extraction. And that works really well in the beginning because everybody wants these NFTs, there's huge demand, there's little supply. But as the breeding happens, and breeding happens exponentially because it's always a split of the current supply, at one point the supply and the demand meet, and then the supply overcomes the demand, and the whole thing comes crashing down. And as soon as the first people start selling, everybody starts selling, and it's kind of like a Ponzi scheme.
It's interesting that you say that, because I remember a conversation we had at the beginning of this year.
Yeah, it's a while ago, yeah.
Even before the Axie Infinity hack, or I don't know what happened there precisely, but are you then actually saying that 90% approximately of all the play-to-earn games will crash down at a particular point, or is that not necessarily what you're saying?
It's very likely. Whenever I research play-to-earn economics, the first thing that I'm looking for is that sustainability factor. How is sustainability generated? And I'm not an economist, you know, I don't have an economy master's. It's all pretty logical thinking. You've got to ask yourself, where is the money coming from? If everybody is participating in an economy just to focus on value extraction, it will always be unsustainable in the long term. And one of the strongest examples that I can give in the current times is Steppen. Have you heard of Steppen?
Mm-hmm,
right. Everybody thinks Steppen is the new big thing, right? But fundamentally, if you go and explore the economics of Steppen, it doesn't work. Because just like Axie Infinity, people in Steppen are only about extracting value from the ecosystem. And there are, you know, sources and sinks. It's where you get tokens, where you spend tokens. But the only sinks in Steppen is to upgrade your shoe, your NFT sneaker shoe, so that you can earn more tokens. So in the short term, you will see a massive spike because everybody is reinvesting their tokens to upgrade their sneakers to earn more money. But in the long term, you're just exponentially increasing your inflation. So I'm calling it right now. Steppen, the way it is now, is doomed to fail.
That's a quite strong and perhaps...
Yeah. And that's my opinion, I just want to say, yeah?
Yeah, it's no financial advice.
Do your own research.
Absolutely. But it's still quite strong and perhaps controversial stance that you're taking, as millions or hundred thousands of people are investing into these games. Aside from the sustainability, because I can imagine that when the supply gets inflated to a certain point, that it has to come crashing down.
Yeah.
What are other flaws or challenges in the play-to-earn gaming space, just to grasp a better understanding on the play-to-earn gaming dynamic currently?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is that in order for a play-to-earn model to work, the underlying game has to be fun. And not just fun where it draws in people, it has to be fun to the point where people are willing to spend money to increase their fun or to increase access of their fun. And there's different ways you can go about it. Those are what I call the value injectors. If you don't have value injectors in your play-to-earn economy, you will only have value extraction, and that's when it's doomed to fail. So I have yet to see I've yet to see many play-to-earn games that will be fun or that are fun. I think Gods Unchained is a good example of a game that is actually fun. The trading card genre in general has been pretty well thought out in play-to-earn gaming. That's why a lot of the games that come up that are successful are trading card games, because by nature, people have this intrinsic need to collect these cards, and you can build your deck, and I can be a player that likes to be competitive, and in order to stay competitive, I need to have the new cards that come out. So I'm constantly spending tokens in order to boost my deck and to stay competitive. And on the other side, there can be people who don't care about being competitive, and they can just sell the cards that they have and they can make a living. And that always has to be that balance. That is one of the fundamental challenges. Now, the second one, and this is something I discovered later, is you can build a game that's fun, that attracts value injectors, but you will still attract value extractors. The scholarship model is a huge strain on any play-to-earn economy. I mean, I'm not one to talk about the ethics of the scholarship guild model. I've written an article about it. People can read about that on the Fair Play Collective blog. But it is a fact that if you build a game that allows for value extraction, you will attract value extraction. Scholars will come to your model if it is financially interesting enough for them to do so. So not only have to build a game that is fun, that will get people to spend tokens, you also have to build hard-coded mechanics that restrict people from taking too much value out of your game. Like energy systems, for example, maximum daily playtime, for example.
Well, that would be quite annoying to me as a personal player if I would have a maximum playing time in a day. But interesting one. So to summarize there, we have the sustainability part. It definitely needs to be fun. Is there also an aspect of like aesthetics? Because if I'm looking at, we can mention it again, Axie Infinity or Illuvio, for example. It's not like Unreal Engine or something like. Is that also a component that plays a role in the success factor or attractiveness of those games, or is it more the mechanics that you just mentioned?
So fun is a very wide descriptor. In the Fair Play Collective, where we try and make these pillars or frameworks that we judge games on, one of our pillars is a game has to be fun. And we spent about 3 weeks debating the concept of what is fun, how do you quantify fun? There is apparently a couple of models out there. The model that we decided to go with was the Agentile model. You can read about it on the website. And it is a model that quantifies fun in, I think, 7 different pillars, like thingies. You have fun to compete, you have fun of destruction, fun of visual, fun of storytelling, and the more boxes of those types of fun that you can check, the more fun your game is overall. And I think there's about 2 or 3 boxes that relate to visually pleasing aesthetics. So yes, that is a part of fun, but it's not the whole picture, because you have plenty of games that aren't visually pleasing. Think of 2D dungeon crawlers, but that have mechanics that are fun. So you just got to check enough boxes on the fun framework in order to be considered a fun game.
Well, perhaps we can extrapolate that fun quantification to your own project, play-to-earn game that you're developing, Castle of Blackwater. Can you tell us what the game entails, but also how it's perhaps doing on the fun dimension?
Sure. So like I said, when one of the first things that I realized in my research was that the game needed to be fun. So when I met up with my co-founder, we started brainstorming, and we went back into our memories and thought, what have been some of the most fun games that we have played that really fit in with the Web3 mindset? And we like battle royales, we all played Call of Duty, but we wanted something different, something more of a niche that hasn't been done. We want to be the guys who say, we're the first to do this. And that's when we thought back about our time playing Among Us, right? Among Us is a game that was hugely popular for a very short-lived time. But the reason that it was popular is because it's a very streamable game, right? At one point, it was actually alive for about a year before it became popular. A couple of streamers picked it up, and there was this whole hype cycle where it became one of the most played games over the course of a couple of months. But it wasn't able to sustain that hype because Among Us lacks a lot of features that make it replayable and give it longevity. It's a very basic game, but the concept is very strong, social deduction, and that's the genre that we decided to go with. I used to play a lot of Town of Salem, Trouble in Terrorist Town, Mafia. Secret Hitler is a board game that is played by quite a few people, and we thought, why don't we take that genre and really innovate a 2D game.
The genre you're talking about, for the people who are not necessarily familiar with those games, what are the distinct features that you saw coming back in these games that you're taking in Castle of Blackwaters? So
a social deduction game is a game that is based primarily around discovering who is the bad guy or who are the bad people. So you usually have 2 teams, good and bad, and the objective of the good team is to finish tasks or to survive. And the bad people are pretending to be the good people. It's very communicative. But at the same time, they're creating chaos, they're killing off the good people, and that's kind of the basics of it. Now, in different games, that has a different context, so it's always played out differently.
So it's also kind of like these reality shows, Expedition
We use the mold, for
We Use the
example.
Mold.
Yeah, that's also social deduction in a sense. Yeah,
Interesting.
and because we think Web3 is very much about communication and learning to know each other and finding out these things, we thought it fit really well. And a final benefit was that a 2D game is much easier and quicker to make than a 3D game because you don't have physics and stuff. So we do think that we can create this game quite quickly, and we'd like to have an alpha build ready before the end of the year. What makes the game fun, right? So imagine Among Us, but then we have a lot of extra features. So there's like a day and a night cycle. It takes place in a huge castle with really cool rooms. We have 10 good guys, and they walk around trying to complete tasks. And there's a big book of tasks where you collect the task. It can be an easy, a medium, or a hard task. So easy is like go to this room and turn on the lights. A medium task is go to this room, get some logs, then go to that room, put the logs on the fire. And a hard task then will involve a multiple chain of events, maybe even require 2 people to cooperate to complete the task. Then every character in the game has a unique set of abilities, which is also something that makes it really fun, because every character has a different playstyle. Some characters are better at completing tasks and reaching that objective. Other characters are better at solving murders. So, and I'm going to give you an exclusive sneak preview.
Okay.
We have one kind of detective role that if he sees a dead body on the floor, he will see some bloody footsteps for a small trail. So he'll be the only one to see like, hey, the killer went this way, and that'll give him some idea of where the killer went. So in the daytime, everyone's doing these tasks. You have the 3 bad people, the satanic faction, we call them. And then we also have the Forgotten faction. That's a third kind of independent faction. I'll tell more about that later. So we have the 10 protectors, the protectors of the castle. They're doing the tasks. The satanic are pretending to do the tasks, but whenever they see someone in a room by themselves, they will stab them and they'll run away trying not to get caught, right?
So for me as the protector, it's also essential to be aware of who the potential satanic
yeah. I mean, I could come up to you in the beginning of the game and I could talk to you and it's like, hey, player, let's team up, you and me, so we won't get busted. We're always keeping an eye on each other. And you're like, yeah, that sounds good, let's do that. We go into a room together and I kill you. I was lying.
So how can I preempt that or kind of...
I mean, the thing is to always, and you see that a lot in these Among Us games, is to always stay in groups as much as possible. Groups of more than one, never really trust one person, but just be very watchful and very suspicious of everyone. And if you see somebody doing a task that usually takes 3 seconds because you've done the task before, but they only take 1 second, why is that? Question everyone's moves and motives and stay away from the people that you think are suspicious, but do keep an eye on them. And if you see somebody go in a room, somebody else goes behind them in that room, go and check it out, what's going on in that room. Is that guy still alive by the time he comes out? Those are the kind of tricks that you have to look for. So that's the daytime. You'll see a mix of that. And in the daytime, the satanic can only kill 1 person, so it can't go too rapidly. And then we get to the nighttime. And at nighttime, things are a lot more dangerous outside because visibility is massively reduced and satanic can kill 2 people instead of 1.
So they're increasingly more dangerous at nighttime.
Exactly, yeah. But we give the players an option. So before it becomes nighttime, you can either decide to stay outside and risk it during the night, because if you do, you'll get 1.5 times the XP for your team to complete the objective. So you'll progress much quicker. If you decide not to, you can go to what we call the safe room. And the safe room is an entire floor upstairs where you can't get killed, but you also can't perform any tasks. So at nighttime, there will be a mix of people. They'll be in the safe room discussing, what happened in the day, what did you see? There'll be a lot of, discussing your suspicions, trying to pinpoint the murderer. But on the other side, some good characters, the protectors, they also have abilities that make them more efficient at nighttime. So some good characters have night visibility, others work extra fast at nighttime. So they also have it in them to be outside. So you can never just think whoever is in the safe room is evil. There's a whole dynamic of you never really know who's who until you catch them in a crime.
Yeah, so just to confirm, the daytime and nighttime, is that like simulated in the game itself? Or
it's simulated. The average game will last between 15 to 20 minutes and a day-night cycle is usually about 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's very fast-paced.
So I played a lot of RuneScape when I was between 30 and 60 years old, and what I found fascinating, and so motivating is that I could develop my character in terms of XP, combat level, and yeah, the more I played, the better I got and the more wealthy I got in that game. Is that mechanic also apparent in Castle of Blackwaters, or are this just rounds as independently standing on themselves, and then I win, I have this dopamine injection, feel good, or what is it like?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's good to separate the castle challenge from the world that we build around the castle.
Okay.
So what happens in the castle kind of stays in the castle. We want the game to be as skill-based as possible, and we want to stay away from pay to win as much as possible. So if you are a player who is just starting out, we want you to have just as much potential to be the best as somebody who's been playing for 5 years.
Instead of a player who invests a lot in particular features.
You won't be able to invest to increase your XP or your skill in the game or your strength. It'll be entirely skill-based. And that happens in the castle. Surrounding the castle, we're building this metaverse, and I don't know if you've ever played Club Penguin, but that was my biggest inspiration for the metaverse.
No, I need to look into that.
I don't know, it doesn't exist anymore. It's a very old school game. I'm sure a lot of your viewers will know what I'm talking about. But Club Penguin, it wasn't so much a game as it was an online virtual gamified community. And yeah, there were mini games, but there wasn't so much like extensive questing and battling. It was just very much focused around having fun with people, chatting, playing mini games. That's the kind of vibe we want to create around the castle in the metaverse. So with regards to progression, because of course you need to give people something to work towards, like you said, that's what keeps you invested in the game. We have the 3 faction system. And in the beginning, we have mapped out this hypothetical player journey. In the beginning, somebody comes in and they're learning the game, so they'll be trying the different factions. They'll be trying to play Protectors. Do I like it? Am I good at it? Satanic, Forgotten. Over time, you develop a preference, probably, for a faction that you prefer. If you want to, you don't have to. Say I really like playing the Satanic. Then I will start focusing on playing the Satanic. I will buy a couple of Satanic NFTs so that I can change which character I want to play. There's different options.
There are different Satanic NFTs which represent different Satanic characters.
Exactly, yeah, because you do still want some variation in your playstyle. You don't want to play, you might not want to play the same character every single time. And you can either buy the NFT or you can rent it from other players. That's a whole nother discussion. But when I play a game as Satanic, and if I win that game, I will get a faction point. And you start off your faction points with absolute 0. And if you win a game as a faction, you will get 1 faction point for that faction. If I then win a game as another faction, I will go back to 0 before I go up in another faction. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So you have to focus at one point. If you want to grind the faction system, you have to really say, okay, I'm now dedicating my time to playing Satanic, and I'm going to start climbing the faction rank of that faction. 1 point, 2 point. Eventually, when you get a certain amount of points, somewhere between 50 and 200, we have to see how the game balancing goes, you'll get access to a secret area in the metaverse that is the Satanic faction hideout. That only has people that have enough faction points, so it's like a micro community in a sense. It has secret lore about how the Satanic originated, people there discuss strategies, playstyle. We have micro community events that are specifically for the Satanic, and in that way we really want to give people the option to progress and work towards their faction, right?
So what you're actually saying is that the better and the more skilled you get, ultimately you can have access to a specific mastermind group who's also excelling at that particular faction. Yeah,
that gives you something to work towards, and you can go even further because Satanic, it's a community, but a community will also have a leadership, and the leadership it'll be like a leadership board, and it will consist of the top 10 faction point players. So the players that are most committed, that have the highest faction points, they will be on the board, and then the community will vote on a faction leader from that board. That faction leader is then the connection between the game developers and the faction. And if that faction leader says like, hey, I think it would be cool next season to have a faction cape that everybody can buy and wear, he can get a designer from his micro community, they can design it, they can vote on which design they think it's best. As a faction, they can bring it to us, we will develop it into an NFT, sell it to the community, and those proceeds will be divided between every party that was involved in that transaction.
Oh, that's really cool, because now it's becoming...
It's a creator community.
Yeah, it's community driven.
And that's important. That's a massive Web3 kind of mindset. You see Sandbox doing it, Decentraland. It's giving players the ability to build upon the game and to really be involved and also profit from, if they want to be involved, kind of like how a DAO does it, with the game's future and evolving.
Can we perhaps circle back to the challenge you earlier mentioned with regards to inflating massively the supply and ultimately games coming crashing down?
Yeah.
How is this issue prevented or cured with Castle of Blackwaters?
Yeah, so we have a couple innovative solutions. For starters, I am pretty certain that the breeding mechanism in its current state doesn't work. So we're not going to use some kind of breeding mechanism. We're going to be in control of the NFT supply.
Okay.
We're starting off with a collection of Generation X, which is 9,000 NFTs. And before the game launches, we want to do 2 more collections. There's Generation Y, which is 6,000 NFTs, and Generation Z, which is 5,000. So in total, there will be 20,000 NFTs, representing 20 different roles, representing 3 factions.
Good.
Right, and that sounds like a lot of NFTs, but you need a very large player base because you need 50 players to have a game, and you don't want to wait 5 minutes for a match to start. So to facilitate matchmaking, that's how many characters and NFTs we have.
Perhaps a stupid question, what if we have 100,000 players and there's 20,000 NFTs? Does that appreciate the price of those NFTs? Or
well, if the demand outpaces the supply. Initially, it'll be a game that can only be played by NFT holders as we're balancing, because we'll need constant input. But over time, we will open the door for a free-to-play model. Free-to-play players will be able to play the game, but they won't be able to have any abilities. They won't play a character. They'll still be in a faction, but they won't have a character or ability, so they don't need an NFT.
Got it.
What was your question before we rolled off to this?
Yeah, the sustainability of the economics, how that's addressed in your game.
Okay, so we're not doing a breeding mechanic, we're controlling the supply of NFTs, and what that means is as player growth is growing, we can kind of release NFTs when we see fit in order to keep a balance of supply and demand. So our NFTs...
proportional to the growth.
Exactly, yeah. We'll have a tight control on that to ensure a healthy, sustainable growth. Then, what I mentioned before, the game has to be fun, and then you have to invent ways for players to spend tokens in order to increase their fun. So we've invented something called the pay for fun mechanic. And the way this works...
I love that, by the way, this word, pay for fun.
You're a gamer yourself.
Yeah.
Have you ever played something like Overwatch or World of Warcraft?
World of Warcraft, absolutely.
Right. Anything role-based, in any kind of game like that, you have different roles in order to complete a party, right? Just like in our game, you have roles. And it is common knowledge, at least from my experience, that some roles are more favorable to play than other roles.
Absolutely.
Everybody wants to play the mage, the damage dealer. Nobody wants to play the tank. Well, little people want to play the tank or the healer. But you need those in order to have a good team. So what we're saying in our game is we want to take that psychology about certain roles being more favorable, and we want to plan out financial incentivization around that structure. So before the start of the game, we have something called a bidding room. And the bidding room is where all the players gather and they will decide what character they want to play before they go into the game, right? So I'm a player. First of all, in order to play a character, you need to have that NFT. So I can either have one NFT or I can have multiple. And then in the bidding room, I can bet tokens on the character that I want to play. You need a minimum amount to bet so that you can play that character, and you can win that back, of course, if nobody else bets on it. But if I want to play...
Are we now still talking about the Satyrs, Protects, those characters?
That's factions, yeah.
Okay,
but within the factions you have the characters. So you have the knight, the lumberjack, the record keeper.
Yes.
Those are the characters, right?
Got it.
So imagine I have 3 of those characters, the knight, the record keeper, and the lumberjack. And this game, I really feel like playing the knight. But maybe the knight is a very... fun character to play that everyone wants to play. So I say, hey, I will bet 20 of my tokens to play the knight. And somebody else next to me can say, no, I want to play the knight. I will bet 30 tokens. So then I say, well, I want to bet 40 because I really want to play the knight. And I know that if I win, I can win that 40 back. And we go back and forth until an equilibrium is found where one guy says, that's too expensive, that's not worth it for me. I'll just play a random character. You can spend that money to buy that fun perception in that sense. On the other side, you have the players who are the scholars, the play-to-earn players. They don't really care who they play, they just want to maximize value. So they throw their hands in the air and they say, I'll play whoever you want, I'm just not going to bet any money on that. So that category of player has a more consistent payout because they're not spending much, they're just earning. Whereas the pay for fun player is spending, and if they don't win that game, they risk losing more than they can earn. And that's how you try and find that balance.
Interesting. So on the one hand, it's great because now I'm not competing against other players who invest disproportionately more than me, and I'm like, they have these features. It does, regardless of how good I am, I can still not compete because they have more powers. And simultaneously, you also have this sustainable economics, which doesn't make me have to worry for the future. Like, okay, when is this crashing moment going to happen? Another question that emerged when you were telling this story: what is then on the back end the earning model for the founders and the developers itself, because it needs to become cost effective, right? Is that through the NFTs or?
The NFTs give us the revenue, the funding that we need in order to build the game. But in my opinion, every Web3 play-to-earn game's revenue model should be based around taxation. And what I mean with taxation, it's very volume-based. And in every transaction that happens, an NFT is bought, an NFT is traded, in the bidding room, anytime tokens are spent, the revenue model of the developer should be to take a small percentage of that and divert that back to the treasury and then to the reserve.
So will there ultimately a token be coming out of?
Yeah, there will be a 2-token system. That's what we think works best within our economy. There'll be a governance token that focuses more on the staking, on the governing aspect. You can only earn that by winning games. And then we have a utility token, which is still a limited supply. So I'm one of the people who doesn't really believe in the unlimited supply utility tokens because it only leads to inflation in the long term. So we have the utility token that you can earn just by playing the game and completing objectives. So every game you will earn a little bit of the utility token, but if you win, you will earn extra governance tokens.
That I see.
Yes.
So a question I already had written down before you came at the table is that it appears to me that a lot of people from the traditional, conventional gaming community are not very favored or very bullish about play-to-earn gaming. They are like, another kind of stream monetization, etc. Do you agree, or how would you address this massive disapproval of the gaming community of integrating play-to-earn gaming?
I think that's a very important question to ask ourselves in the industry. Of course, I don't agree, otherwise I wouldn't be building in the space.
Perhaps you agree to a certain extent, but you are having a different view. Or?
I don't agree with them, but I understand where they're coming from. I understand why their perception is what their perception is. Because gamers have been exploited for so many years by the likes of EA, by a bunch of big companies who bring out these games and then only sell half the game. They have microtransactions. Gamers are very suspicious about these kind of models, and they can and they will be used by big corporations to try and find new revenue models. And then, of course, when gamers see the first generation of play-to-earn games that are no fun to play, it is very easy to draw conclusions that the model sucks and that it's just a massive cash grab. What the gamers have yet to realize is kind of that moment that I've had in that path towards is that in the long term...
So this supports the point that you also had this perception initially.
Yeah, when I initially discovered Axie Infinity and stuff, I agreed with the gamers. It didn't make sense. I still understood the technology of NFTs, but I didn't yet see how it could work and how it could be advantageous to the players. But now, and if you just go to the core principle of digital ownership of your assets, that is such a powerful component that will give players so much in the long term. I mean, every player can relate to a game that they've spent hours on, that they spent so many dollars on. Think about FIFA. So many gamers play FIFA.
Oh man, I spent so much money on that game.
And every single year, a new FIFA comes out with a couple of tiny changes, and you have to spend all that money again to rebuild the same team that you had before.
Horrendous.
Exactly, and that money is gone, it's wasted.
Yeah.
Tell me how it's not an improvement in your gaming life that you can buy those players, you can own them, you can carry them to the next version, you can sell them, you can trade them. Those players that you buy, they become yours. How is that not a revolutionary, positive thing in the gaming world?
I completely agree.
And that's what the gamers need to eventually, they will come to understand, is that there is so much positivity in that innovation, but we haven't solved the problems around it to make that the highlight of the innovation. People are unfortunately still too focused on the play to earn scholarship. It's all about making money. People in developing countries will soon sacrifice their jobs to play games professionally. That's a myth. That's not going to work. But it is the steps along the way. It's all very new. Eventually we'll get to a point where that equilibrium is reached and players will be better off than they are today, and they will come around. I'm sure of it.
Of course, you're contributing a part already in educating the space and informing people. But what are the things, or perhaps the timeline that needs to happen in order to reach that equilibrium that you just mentioned?
It's very simple. Play-to-earn games need to become fun and they need to become sustainable. And I think there's a big push more recently around hybrid models. That's something that we're going with as well. It is a myth that building a play-to-earn game, everything has to be on the blockchain. The blockchain isn't designed to sustain that amount of transaction. The best thing to do is to build as much as you can off-chain, so in a centralized database.
Is it not designed because you also have these layer 2 chains who are far more efficient, right?
Yeah,
of
course. There are games who are trying to do everything on the blockchain, but from a development standpoint, this is our opinion and our hypothesis. We only try to use blockchain where blockchain is actually an added advantage. We don't just want to build the hype of blockchain and introduce it everywhere where it's just going to cause more problems than it solves problems. We think the blockchain should be used for digital authentication of digital assets, and all the other game mechanics should just be built in a game engine as we have them now. It's that hybrid model that will not only create the most efficient games, but that will also reduce the barrier of entry from a financial and a knowledge standpoint, so that we can onboard more of the old school gamers into the new system.
This resonates a lot with me, because I especially a couple months ago, saw people becoming irrationally bullish about projects as long as the word blockchain was integrated into the project. And when you ask the question like, okay, what's the distinct value of that blockchain integrating into the game, no one had any clue. So that resonates a lot with me. So now we are currently in a time where of the global events that are taking place, where the market sentiment isn't perhaps necessarily at the all-time high, perhaps even lower. On the point we just discussed, that most of the game community have to transform or transcend their perception that they are currently having on blockchain in gaming. What do you think, me as a gamer, if I have no knowledge of Web3 game, where can I start and how can I best equip myself and educate myself during these times to familiarize myself with gaming?
I think a lot of that responsibility lies with the game builders themselves, and a lot of people in my network say that the Web3 gaming revolution is going to be one of the biggest onboarders of the next wave of Web2 people. To give you an example, in our free-to-play model, we're going to design it in such a way that you don't need any blockchain knowledge in order to come and play our game. So you don't even need a digital wallet. You can just access it through the browser and play it like any game that you've ever played before on a browser.
Okay.
You will earn tokens. Those tokens will be off-chain, so they'll just be database tokens like any gold currency that you've ever played. However, we will give you the option whenever you want. So imagine you're playing and you start earning some tokens. At one point you're like, hey, I'd like to cash out these tokens because that's an option that we provide. When you do so, we can guide you through this tutorial of, you have to install a digital wallet, watch this video. Now you can convert your fake off-chain tokens into on-chain tokens, because we still think you've earned those, they're yours to keep. You get that transaction. And now suddenly we have somebody who a couple months ago didn't know what a Bitcoin was. He suddenly now has a digital wallet with an in-game cryptocurrency. And when he can use that cryptocurrency to buy his first NFT somewhere down the line, he now has his first NFT, and we'll teach him along the way, this is what an NFT is, this is how it works. And then when he has that NFT, we'll teach him, now you can rent out that NFT, or you can sell it or trade it. And then step by step, it is our responsibility to onboard these people and to get them comfortable to the point where they don't even realize they're being onboarded. It has to be seamless in that sense. And DeFi Kingdoms is a pretty good example of accessibility and making that barrier to entry as easy as possible.
So it's far more natural, because when the internet, I don't know how old I was when I first browsed on the web, but I wasn't researching how TCP and those protocols behind the work. I was just doing some fun stuff and trial and erroring. And now it seems a lot that if all these YouTubers, all those Twitter channels, on LinkedIn as well, post these massive, which are valuable, but it's not necessarily the only way to become onboarded to Web3, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and that's why I say it's the responsibility of the developers to make them as accessible as possible in order to onboard that new wave of people. Because without that accessibility, you're just going to scare people away. And we don't want this to become an us versus them thing. And I don't think that's what it is. But looking back at where blockchain came from, and like I said, I was involved in 2016 when nobody knew what a Bitcoin was. Nowadays, everyone in my family knows, people around me know, and they don't know the extent of DAOs, NFTs, ERC 721, but they will get there. Just like the internet revolution, initially people were like, oh, I'll never have a home computer, blah, blah,
What's
blah.
an API?
Exactly. People evolve with technology. It's just that you have the innovators and then you have the people who eventually catch up. But seeing how Bitcoin is still alive and the technology is only progressing, some of the most intelligent people in the industry are going to blockchain. It shows where the direction of innovation is going, and I'd rather be on the train than watching it drive by myself.
Yeah, completely agree. I know you're also doing something, or not just something really interesting with the Fair Play collective.
Yeah.
Can you perhaps tell us also briefly, what the main goal of this collective is?
Sure. So, like I said, when I first started researching play-to-earn gaming, I realized the model was fundamentally flawed, and there were a lot of people capitalizing on the problems, getting really rich, and then people bag holding. It's just a very bad space to be in. So initially we thought by building a game with better principles, higher standards, trying to fix these problems will, inspire people to change their ways. But as we were building, and I was speaking to a lot of people and networking, I realized that just building a game isn't enough because you're still fighting against the crowd. So sometimes I had a conversation with another builder that did really align with what I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Anna from Rogue Fox Guilds, for example, she was one of the first people where I really had this epiphany moment and said like, hey, what if people like you and me who really connect and see the problems and want to build a better industry, what if we formalized a relationship, a community where we have these kind of forward-thinking builders, and together we're a much stronger voice because we can create like a community of speakers and we can combine our communities to really advocate for better change. And she loved the idea, so that kind of snowballed. And I remember really funny because I'm with my co-founder Remo at the time. I was really pushing for the Fair Play Collective to be this thing as well, but Remo wanted us to focus a little bit more on Castle of Blackwater, which is also important. And the best way to get Remo to work is, I just bought the domain fairplaycollective.com, and I built a really shitty website.
Was it still available?
Yeah. Fair Play Collective. I came up with the name after some brainstorming, and I built a really, really terrible website visually, and I put Remo's face on it, knowing that as soon as Remo saw his face on a really shitty website, it would only take a couple days before he revamped it. So he did. Remo spent a couple days building a really cool website, and as soon as you have a cool website and you have the vision and the mission well explained, it becomes real, it becomes a thing. And we started collecting people, and then we created the founding members. We have four founding members. I need to check them, maybe even 6 in total. But now we have 5 play-to-earn projects in general, in total. And every week we meet up and we talk about, how can we help each other get better? Because we're all building sustainable games. How can we help each other this week to identify problems? How can we do marketing together? And now we're hosting knowledge sessions as well for the public. So last week we had a session with somebody with a PhD in economics, somebody with a PhD in game studies, and we spent an hour talking about how to build sustainable play and earn economies. Next Wednesday we're doing another session about how to build DAOs, because the Fair Play Collective is going to be a DAO. And yeah, it started off as this very small idea, but it's kind of growing into this whole separate entity that is it has a lot of potential. Just yesterday, and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to announce the news yet, but we're in late stage talks with Unstoppable Domains to be one of the first sponsors of the Fair Play Collective, because they also believe in the vision of creating a better play to earn future. So yeah, we're just taking it day by day and seeing how it grows. But it's all done from a DAO perspective, where everybody inputs and everybody outputs.
Yeah, it sounds like there are extremely specified people in that space who, understand even in more in-depth layers than what you're seeing online, but simultaneously I could also join those guest sessions. That's what you're saying. So it's accessible for the masses as well in order to get educated. Right?
Yeah, once every 2 weeks we usually have a knowledge session. Once every 2 weeks we'll do some kind of Twitter space. We do have sessions where we try to spread our collective knowledge to the public, but it's also important that we stay an exclusive membership club and that we also promote each other internally, because that's the advantage of being in the collective. And in order to get into the collective, you have to abide by the framework. The framework of the Fair Play Collective is built around 4 pillars: transparency, which is public founders. We don't work with anonymous founders or anything like that, because 90% of the time it's a rug pull. You have to have a fun game based on the model that I explained. You have to have a strong community and an open, respectful community where people are allowed to ask tough questions and they don't just get banned for spreading fun. And the last one is economics. The economics have to be sustainable, and it doesn't have to be a perfect model, but you need to explain thoroughly how you've thought about economics, that you understand the problems, and that you have created some kind of solutions to deal with the problems that we previously discussed about.
Sounds like for my coming play-to-earn game investment, I need to look at the portfolio which is in the Fair Play Collective.
For example, yeah.
Okay, really interesting. What are you most excited about for the coming 12 to 24 months?
Wow.
It can be shorter, longer.
Yeah, I'm excited about 2 things. The 2 things that I'm working on. I think Castle of Blackwater, once that word starts getting around, we've just started investing in marketing. Once people start waking up to the solutions that we're pitching and to the game potential that it has, I think we're going to see some explosive growth, and that's going to be very exciting. I can't wait to actually start building. We have a cinematic trailer coming out soon that we're working on, and I can't wait to just get a demo out. We have the Mint experience as well, which is something revolutionary. So a while ago, we're building our game in Unity, right? And a while ago, Unity came out with some new features that allow blockchain processes to be integrated in a Unity environment. So we are the very first company to introduce a Mint experience inside of a Unity environment. So people have to play a minigame, WASD, like discover some puzzles, got to find some keys, find the faction door, learn about the factions with characters. Then you get to a chest, and from that chest you can mint the NFT within the Unity environment. That's never been done before, yeah.
Whoa, that's far more interactive and fun experience than just the regular minting that we are seeing.
We're trying to set a new standard for gamified experiences and proving that, you know, fun has to be the core concept of everything that you do in the play-to-earn space. So we're really excited about that. You know, will it work as we intended? We have some really intelligent people building it. But of course, when you're at the forefront of technology and you're pioneering something that's never been done before, there's always room for error. So we're very anxious to see whether it's all going to work as we intended.
But it definitely seems like the embodiment of what you earlier mentioned, like naturally and healthily onboarding people into Web3 instead of having them educating themselves. So such experience facilitates that greatly.
Yeah. So that's the Castle of Blackwater side. With the Fair Play Collective, we're also going to be doing some really cool things. We're looking to expand the membership and the sponsorship portfolio so that we can generate some revenue for the DAO, which will then be used to facilitate further growth. And somewhere down the line, we also want to organize the Fair Play Collective conference. It's going to be a big play-to-earn focused event that is not so much about self-promotion, but way more about quality knowledge sharing. So it's going to have interactive workshops. It's going to have some experts talking about really complex problems. And it's going to be entirely focused around play-to-earn gaming, because such a conference doesn't really exist yet. So Fair Play Collective wants to be the first. So 2 things that are equally exciting. I just hope I have enough time to split between the 2, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, we have had some other Web3 entrepreneurs, and it seems like keeping the balance between privately and working is...
I don't have much of a private life. My girlfriend will attest to that. It's been non-stop working. But it's fine because, and I say that to people a lot as well, when you're working in an industry and you're following your passion, I haven't worked a day in my life since I started in Web3. It's just been fun all along. And I work tremendous hours from morning till evening, but it just doesn't feel like work because 1, you're doing it for yourself and for your team. And 2, I mean, I'm building games. As an avid gamer, it's fantastic.
It's like playing.
Exactly. I've never been more excited about my future.
Super inspirational, super educational story. I have to admit, play-to-earn games seems initially very easily understandable, but when you walk me through the mechanics in this pod, I was like, okay, there's definitely a lot of things that I hadn't thought about. So yeah, very educational. Very looking forward to the mint that's coming out. I hope the experience will be well, and I will definitely follow. Where can people who are listening to this podcast or viewing this find you?
The easiest place to go is our website. Well, we have castleofblackwater.com and we have fairplaycollective.com. You'll find links to all the socials. There's a joint whitelist competition campaign. So just check out those websites and follow through. If you manage to find your way into our Castle of Blackwater Discord, I'm usually active there on a daily basis. So if anybody has any personal questions for me or wants to learn more about our models and innovations, they're always free to come and hang out with us. We're a very pleasant community. We try to be anyway.
Yeah, I've already joined that, so I can attest to that, but I will also share the links in the comments. But thank you, Joren. It was a very fun experience, and thanks for giving so much knowledge.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me on, and I love what you do with the podcast. We're waiting for you to join us full time in the Web3.
Let's see about the future. Thank you, man.
Thank you.